Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me today on an episode of Hear Me Out. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, April. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. So, I love to start out with the question, what is your connection to hearing loss?
Okay, so the experience that I have of hearing loss is previously I'm in education, and previously I've had students who have been deaf or hard of hearing. And from a teacher student perspective, that's been quite interesting, but it didn't really impact me personally until very recently. So, my nephew, Patrick, he's now 25, and last year, specifically last year, when he was 24, he had lost his hearing completely, so became profoundly deaf. And this was gradual over a period of time because Patrick has a genetic condition called neurofibromatosis. And that is a condition, it's a rare genetic condition. And it is where benign tumours grow on nerve endings. And as part of the condition and the progression of the illness, those tumours grow on the auditory nerves. And so, as a result, a lot of people with this condition will end up with hearing loss. So, as a result, we as a family are navigating a new space, if you like, with a family member who is now profoundly deaf. And so, meeting with Patrick earlier this year and seeing how much he struggled with group conversations, family meetings, get-togethers, it's really been heartbreaking to see, and it takes it to another level when it's someone you know and love personally that you would usually be able to interact with in a very different way to now that Patrick is deaf. We have to do things very differently. So that's the connection, if you like. So it's a real lived experience from a family member and seeing the struggle that he has, but also us as a family of hearers coming to terms with how we work together to not only make life better for Patrick if we can, but that communication piece has been real in terms of that. It's kind of eye opener. It's opened up a whole world for me that I even previously in education you couldn't kind of you deal with it, but then you move on. Whereas this is kind of within the family and is something that especially my sister deals with and his siblings deal with daily.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really beautiful to hear that you as a family have taken this on to help Patrick because you often hear of stories where it just falls on the individual with hearing loss and they have to figure that out on their own. So that is so wonderful to hear that you as a family are working together to help Patrick. I think that's really, really beautiful. Wow.
Oh,
So
thank
I would like
you.
to switch gears a little bit because you
Yeah.
have started a new company called Yuple, and I want everyone to know about it. So let's dive into that.
Okay, so again, that comes from Patrick. So he's the starting point, and I met with him earlier this year. We were just visiting, going around to see him, and it kind of hit me at that point. It was February time, and it really hit me at that point the struggle that he has to communicate, and for us as a family. And it was like there was a missing piece there. And he uses a tablet, and the text appears on the screen of the tablet and it's white text on a black background. And it's really difficult to read. It's also exhausting for him to read. And we were having to slow down what we were saying. We were having to touch his shoulder and say, "It's me speaking now." And it was really clunky and just really difficult. You couldn't have a normal, in inverted commas, conversation. And I just came away from that and I just found it heartbreaking. And I just thought, Pat, out of all our family, he's this chatty 20 something who loves to be involved. And he'd always be the one on the phone call that you'd have a really great conversation with. And he's got such interest in lots of different things that he loves to talk about. And you just couldn't do that. And I came away from it thinking, I want to solve this. I want to fix this. There needs to be something that works better than what he's got for Pat. So I came away and just thought, I'm going to make an app. I'm going to give this a go. I have no clue where to start. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out what's out there. So I started researching. This is what opened me up to this world of the deaf community and the hard of hearing community and finding out what's available. And it really surprised me. You know, there are some amazing things out there. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to create something that is very different to what's out there, that's about that 20 something who wants to be out, who wants to be social, who wants to connect, but can't do it in the way that they'd like to because of their hearing loss. And so I'm in the process of building this app, and Yuple is the name of the company because it's about you plus people, and that equals Yuple. So it's about bringing people together. It's about saying you're a part of the conversation. I don't want anyone to feel left out of a conversation because of the way they process sound. And for me, it's about connecting with the deaf community to enable them to have the voice. And it was a way of me saying, right, what can I do for Pat that's going to make his life that little bit easier? So that's really where it all started. And it's taken me on a massive journey over the last sort of 6 or so months. Um, and it's been a privilege to be able to do that. And I'm very much, I hear, I'm in the hearing world, and I'm super conscious that I have no real personal understanding of what it means to lose your hearing. So I'm really keen to connect with people like yourselves and within the community to understand better, because I don't want to just come in and say, well, I've got this and I'm going to fix it. It's about, what do you need? This is your seat at the table, and how do we make this work for you?
That's inspiring. Wow. That's just beautiful that you've started this. And I'm curious because you said you were in an educational background and now you've
Mm.
taken on building an app. Like where did that even start? Like how did you just sit down and kind of write a list out of, okay, this is what I need to figure out? Or like how did that even connect and process?
Yeah, I think what I've realized, and I was sort of reflecting on this as a individual who has always been quite creative. So I think creativity isn't just about whether you can draw or paint or sculpt or create music. It's about that problem solving. And so for me, it always starts with what's out there already. So if you've got a problem that you're wanting to solve, what's already out there? You know, what works already, or what's out there that doesn't work? And I think for me, it was that starting point of, right, what are the available apps? What assistive technology is out there? And how can we either make it better or do it differently, or, you know, even bringing those things together to work for Patrick. And so the starting point was, yes, right, there are apps out there, but what can we do that's going to be slightly different? And there were three barriers, which I can talk about in a moment. And it was a case of thinking, okay, there are other people doing this, and there are other people who are far more experienced, and there are experts out there who are far better at this than me. But if I can try and find something that works, we're almost getting halfway there. And I think that starting point of what's out there, what's the problem, and how could we potentially solve it in a different way, that was really the starting point. And I live in a time, and we live in a time where technology is changing on a daily basis. And I just thought, right, how could we potentially use AI to maybe code some of this so that I'm not a coder? Oh my gosh, if you'd have told me, you know, at my age, I'd be learning to code. Oh my goodness. So thank goodness for this technology. So it's got me so far, and there are some hurdles that we've got to get over to get to the next step, but it's given me the chance to see what's possible.
Awesome. That's really exciting. And without giving too much away, because I know you haven't launched yet, what can we expect to see, like how it works?
Yeah.
Like as you said, there are other apps out there. So what is making you different,
Mm.
without giving too much away?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because that's the question I keep getting asked, and it's by the experts, it's by people who are in this field and working and maybe have worked on this for years. Um, I kind of think that there's three barriers, and kind of they sit under this umbrella of stigma. So around stigma of hearing loss. And that goes for everyone from Pat's age in the 20s, right the way up until you're 60, 70, 80, where you've got hearing loss. And you might feel that stigma of wearing assistive technology or using assistive technology, whether that's your hearing aids or your cochlear implant. Not everyone feels proud of that. Not everyone sees it as a superpower. And sometimes people just want to fit in. Sometimes people don't want to just stand out and be different. Sometimes people want to fit into that hearing world. And so I wanted to create something that was as stigma-free as possible. It becomes something that can sit on a table. So it would be through a device, maybe that's your phone, maybe that's a tablet. It switches on and it just works and it captures your conversation, it transcribes your conversation. And the three barriers that we were experiencing with Pat was that navigating group conversations. So it's about bringing people together. So in a meeting situation similar to this, other apps work really well and they can transcribe, and because it's just one person speaking at a time. But when you've got a group of people, your friends are together, you're having a beer, you're out at the cinema, you're going to a festival, you're at a sporting event, what happens then? And so it's the connection between people and group voices. It's also the barrier of background noise. Because as I've learned, which I didn't realize, hearing aids amplify everything. They don't distinguish between voices, and the clinking in the kitchen of the restaurant you're in or the background noise of cars on the road, they amplify everything. And so it's distinguishing between the background noise and the spoken voice. And then the third thing was accessibility for people who might not be able to afford a really expensive piece of technology. What happens for people who can't afford a really expensive subscription for an app that does amazing things, but they can't afford it? So that's the three things we're trying to navigate and trying to provide a solution to and be different on. And we also want to be kind of hitting that target market of the 20s and 30s who just want to be out, who want to be social, who want to get together, who want to be part of that conversation.
That's awesome. I really, really admire your approach to this because, like you said, you don't have hearing loss yourself, and it
Mhm.
sounds like you're doing all the right things to find a better solution to what's out there. And just like hearing you talk about it, like it's just so inspiring and exciting that there's going to be more options on the table. And I think that's like you said, the way technology changes, the more options for people who can't afford, like you said, like the higher, more expensive things, like that is what we need. We
Mm.
need more options because not everyone likes this app or that app or this way or that way. And I think that's just really exciting to see, especially with the help of AI. Like you said, like there's so many possibilities, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
curious, do you consult with Patrick then? He must be excited that you started this project because that's really cool
yeah.
that his aunt took this on.
I know. And it's like, I don't want to put any pressure on you, Pat, but I really need your feedback. It's really interesting because we've done one round of testing and it didn't work. It didn't work because he's on Android. I've been creating on Apple. So it didn't work and it was slow. And we managed to separate out voices and speakers, but then that was a bit clunky. So I was like, right, let's go back to the drawing board, start again. And kind of not from scratch, but as I was trying to fix it, I then broke the prototype. So I was just like, oh my gosh. And this is where it comes down to I'm kind of learning massively as I'm doing this. So we're back to a place where it is kind of working, but I do know I'm getting to that point where I'm going to need more expert help
Right.
at some stage. But for Pat, because um, he manages lots of kind of issues with his disability as well. So it's not just the hearing loss. He's trying to navigate a world and it's really difficult for him. And so lots of change and using something new. And again, that's something that I've learned is that sometimes people will choose what they know rather
Mhm.
than wanting to try something new. So even though the device and the white text on a black background isn't great for him, he's comfortable using it because it's what he knows. So I think that's going to be interesting, a conversation around how do we move from something you know, even if it doesn't work that well, to something better, but it's different.
That's a
And,
good point.
I think what I'm learning, and I went to a networking event with a friend of mine who has hearing aids in both ears, and she lip reads. And she said, I've got to think of so many different things when I come to an event. I've got to think about where that person who's speaking at the front is stood, whether there's light in the background which casts shadow over their face, if they're turning to face their presentation screen. So there's so many things people have to navigate that I don't even consider, that on top of that, this is why we want to make the app as simple as possible. It's not going to have loads of whistles and bells. It's not going to be super techy. It's literally going to be a one press button and you're on. Because you're facing so many challenges already. You don't need something else that you've got to kind of try and work out how to use it before you even get started. So I
Yeah.
think that's been the biggest feedback from Pat is to make it as simple and as user friendly as possible without it feeling, oh, it's another thing I've got to think about.
Yeah. And it's such a good point that you brought up, like when hearing people don't realize, like when we go into more overstimulating environments, it's a
Mm,
lot to like think
yeah.
about and engage with and concentrate on. And yeah, I like the simplicity. That's a
Mm,
phenomenal angle because it's a lot. It really
yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
like you said, Patrick doesn't want to necessarily have to learn something too new. And it's just like with new
Yeah.
hearing aids, you have to give it time. So one conversation at a time is probably the easiest transition is
Mm,
just try it for 5 minutes a day and then build
yes.
up to it. Like that's how I started with my hearing aids. It's just little by little, you have to
Yes.
readjust and retrain yourself to all the new things that can come up. Um, Now I'm curious because now you're an entrepreneur. Do you have any advice for anyone kind of wanting to start out on their own, whether it be in the tech field or just an entrepreneur in general? Do you have any advice for people?
Yes. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is things take a lot longer than you want them to. I was just like, this was February, and I was like, right, I'm going to build an app. It's going to be ready next week. Because I was just so keen. I think if you are approaching a problem that you see a solution to, you want it now. And I'm quite impatient. So I was just like, right, this is going to work and I'm going to make it happen and it's going to be ready next week. And Patrick's life is going to be so much easier. You've got to be realistic and you've got to take that step back and think, right, okay, if you think something's going to take maybe a week, it's going to potentially take a month. If it's going to take a month, it might take six. So it's having that longer view. I think that doesn't take away from you having that urgency because it's still a problem that needs to be resolved. I think number one is things take time and they take a lot longer than you want them to. But the second piece would very much be around go back to who you're serving, because if you are solving a problem, then speak to the people who have that problem rather than coming at it from the perspective of, I know what I need because I need that for Pat. It was, what does Pat need? But also, what does the wider deaf community need? Because they're going to have different needs as well. And I think that's what's been it's been that eye opener for me. And it's been quite humbling for me as well to learn the process that is needed by a person who has lost their hearing. And so it's coming always back to the person you're serving. What do they need? And what is going to improve based on their feedback, not just on the assumptions of what I have for that solution. And that goes for any kind of entrepreneur. You know, you're out there looking for opportunities. You might be meeting with people, you might be networking, you might be chatting with people, and it's listening. And that's we're talking about hearing loss, but listening isn't just with your ears, it's about that whole understanding of what's out there, who's out there, what are they doing, how are they doing it, and ultimately what do they need. So yeah, I think those would be my two biggest. If I could go back and, every time come back to the starting point, it would be yes, things take longer and be patient, but stick at it. And number two is go to your customer, go to that place where you're meeting that need and what does that look like?
Both great pieces of advice. And I think too, um, with the first piece you made about how things take longer, it doesn't mean that you're not on the right path. Because I feel like
No.
that's where some people might say, well, this is taking too long. It's not what I meant to be doing. But
Mm.
that's where I find perseverance is where you see the most like rewards. So those
Yeah.
are really two great pieces there. Um, Now, do you have like a launch date in mind yet? A launch date in mind, or
Oh, it's a tough one. And I was thinking about this with the questions that you sent through, and I was like, oh, I would so love to be able to say, yes, we are launching, we go live at the moment. So I'll say, sort of, as an understanding, what's been lovely is I've started to build a community around Yuple on Instagram. And what's been great is a lot of people have started to feed into that community. And I've had people from across the world starting to say, is this available? When can I get this? And again, that's kind of understanding, yes, I'm hitting the right notes for people. It is something that people need and are looking for. But at the stage we're at the minute is building the community so that when we're ready to launch, we're ready to serve straight away. We're in prototyping and testing at the moment. So the prototyping testing is to make sure that when we do launch, it's what people have asked for, and it's making sure it's as close to that finished product and as close to perfect as we can get it. What I would say is if any of the people watching and part of your community want to trial and test and be a part of the testing, then please reach out, because that's something that I'm really open to is I want to get this into the hands of as many people as possible. To do that, I want to get as much feedback as possible. And so I've already had people from the sporting communities, from education, from larger community groups who have said, we'd love to trial this. Can we give it a go? Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not the end outcome, can we give the prototype a test? So at this point, anyone who wants to give this a go, please let me know. Your name can go on the list. And then as soon as that prototype is, and I'm hoping that's going to be in a matter of kind of weeks rather than months, hopefully then I can just be sending a link to people, which they can just open on their phone, trial it for say 2 weeks. There'll be a feedback form, which will be super simple to gather their responses. And then that information will go back into the final product. And that will be almost a way then of being able to say thank you, is enabling people then to be a part of that testing group and to know that they're making a difference to that final outcome.
That
So
is
yeah,
so exciting.
I'd love to say, yeah, we're launching on, and one day we will. I really hope that one day we'll be able to say, yeah, I'll come back to you and I'll say, April, we've got this date and it's going to happen. Um, but yeah, anyone who's open for testing at the moment, we've got people already on the wait list to do that. There will be a website that I can again signpost people to, which they can then sign up on that website. But please connect with me via my socials and we can go from there.
That's so exciting. And what are your socials so people know?
So it is at Yuple. So that's Yuple dot app, APP. So at Yuple.app is where you'll find us. And I'm also on at I am Sarah Alex Carter, which is a little bit longer. So do a bit of a search around Yuple app and I'll come up and you'll find me that way. But on Instagram, especially, I am on LinkedIn through my personal page. But yeah, if you find me via Instagram and we can start a conversation. And yeah, it would be amazing to have people from across the world to trial this because, again, culturally, language, it's all different, it's all in the mix. And I think that's a really good kind of gathering that understanding of how people use it and the different needs that people will have around it. So yeah.
That's so exciting. I'll be sure to include a link to your socials below. And I'm just so in awe of your approach to building this app because like you're asking all the right questions and incorporating all the right people, like asking the community to participate. Like that is so phenomenal because like you said, you're serving a unique audience where we all have different needs and how we communicate. But that like I'm just so excited about this. And this is I really love the approach that you're taking to building this app. I'm just sitting here listening to you and I'm just like, wow, she's thinking of everything. Like this is so wonderful. I'm so excited.
Oh, do you know what? That makes me feel so happy as well because it is just me and I'm kind of approaching it tentatively, step at a time. But to hear that from yourself, and that means a lot because it's it's too important to get this wrong, and it's too important to get it wrong from the perspective of I'm coming in to fix things. And I really hope that, and from what you're saying, it feels like, yeah, I'm going in the right direction with it.
Yes, no, you definitely are. And the fact that, you're willing to send the prototype to people to give you the feedback is so, so important because there might be something that someone says that you're just like, oh, and it clicks and things and fall
Yeah,
into different places. And it's just, you never know. People see things differently, test things differently, and that's how you make the best
yeah,
product possible, right?
yeah,
So that is
yeah.
super, super exciting. And before we end this wonderful conversation, is there anything else you'd like us to know about Upol that we can help support you with, or yeah, anything? Any last
Yeah,
words?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm really interested in the way people potentially could use it. So I've started to have conversations with the sporting community, for example, so with coaches and with people who play sports, particularly within tennis at the moment, interestingly. But I've also got the UK Deaf Sport organisation. We're having a conversation around sport. There's another area that I'm really interested in, which is kind of the hospitality area, which is cafes, restaurants, bars, clubs. And then there's more the festival kind of events space. So if there's anyone out there who has any kind of connections with those spaces, that would be really interesting to start the conversation around how that could potentially work. I mean, it's such a strange position to be in some respects, because with that one hand, I'm holding the desire to make this work for Patrick. That's my goal. And I'm almost like, well, if I can do that, then job done. But then I've got the whole community in the other hand, and I'm saying, right, okay, well, my vision would be for this to be everywhere and for people to have access to this for their day-to-day lives in lots of different environments. So it would be great to know if there's anyone within those communities of, particularly within hospitality or within events, that would love to reach out to me to say, yeah, I could see this working, or yeah, we could potentially use this within our franchise or license, or I don't know, our festival, how that could work. That would be a really interesting conversation to have. Yeah.
Yes, I love how big you're dreaming. Like this is so great. And I love how you're thinking of all the different types of social situations. And that's just so exciting to hear that the possibilities are out there where we can cater like an app to help communicate better within those different sound settings. So that's just so
Yeah.
exciting. I'm looking forward to this launching and you helping people's lives become better. So thank you so much for joining me today because this has been a wonderful conversation and so many more people are going to be able to discover you through this and communicate with you. And I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you so much, April. I honestly, it's a privilege to be able to have this platform to chat with you and the work that you do. And I'm constantly reposting your stories and your posts because they just sum up, a lot of what Patrick is feeling and what others are feeling. So you are a voice for that community. So thank you so much. It's been amazing to chat with you about this. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, and you. Take care.